It's the 31st of October 1916. The First World War was raging in Europe, and here in the United States a lone man was on a mission. He was 64 years of age. He was on his way back to the east coast of America after a long and exhausting public speaking tour. This man started a religious institution or a movement that would have a dramatic effect upon my family in decades to come, well after this man passed away. As his train approached a small town in the northern part of Texas called Pampa, he took ill and suddenly died. His name was Charles Taze Russell. He had an entourage of fellow believers with him when he died, and they accompanied his body back to the west coast of America. He was born in 1852, son of devout Presbyterian parents of Scottish-Irish descent. His father was a wealthy businessman, and Taze Russell was part of that business. His life course was motivated or determined by events beyond his control, and not because of the business world that he would inherit from his father. It was what happened to him in his childhood that changed his perspective in life and his vision for the future. It also changed the life of other people as well. This is him as a young man. He looks troubled to me. Turns out he was. He was having a crisis of faith in God. As a young boy, he was traumatized as a result of the Civil War in America. Death and destruction was all around him. Then at 9 years of age, his mother died. The Civil War was a time of misery for this God-fearing country of America. Young Tars Russell saw this on a regular basis. Whatever happened to the land of the free? And where was God in all of this chaos? Adults struggle to process this, let alone someone at a young age. This was a difficult upbringing for him. There are those who have suggested that he was also undergoing a form of spiritual abuse, perhaps from his deeply religious father or the community around him. The doctrine of hellfire was a tool of control. The notion that you would burn in hell or purgatory as punishment for your sins, or for disobedience to parents or not conforming to the rules of the church, was a common form of indoctrination. It still is a tool of control today in most religions. Some say it's purely symbolic, others say it's literal. Nevertheless, this doctrine Russell could not understand. How could a God of love, mercy and forgiveness coexist with a barbaric concept such as that? Something was wrong. For Russell, God was now an enigma. As he got older, he now placed himself on a collision course with mainstream religion. This was the start of an idea for him, or a new calling or career for him personally. The timing was right. There was a spiritual, religious vacuum in this God-fearing country of America. Tars Russell was not alone with initiating different thought and spiritual change. There were others in his day that were on a similar path, which eventually gave us the Seventh-day Adventist Church, the Mormons, and courtesy of Tars Russell, a group that eventually became Jehovah's Witnesses. There were others as well. The hellfire doctrine that traumatized young Tars Russell motivated him to rebel. For him it was an evil concept, satanic. On that many concur with him. Then there are those who contend that he simply, in time, exchanged one evil concept for another, just as bad, just as evil. Then there are many who believe that he was directed by God himself, God's plan to save the world at a later date. A unique form of prejudice against established religion was adopted by Mr. Russell. The view that other religions were part of Satan's agenda would soon become the dominant teaching in this new organization or religion he created. Pastor Russell, as he liked to be called, did lots of research, and he formed views about God and God's plan for mankind. His view of Zionism is well documented. Zionism is the belief in the return or the reinstatement of a Jewish state in the historical regions of the Middle East, the land of Israel. According to Mr. Russell, the return of the Jewish state, return of Christ, the rapture, the end times, and all the other things supposed to go with it, all somehow work in together in God's agenda to invoke a better world. He became overwhelmed with apocalyptic ideas and searched the Bible for hidden gems of information. The last book of the Bible is all about the apocalypse. Ancients had visions and dreams that were horrific in nature. His obsession with Christ's return, Zionism, the end times or end of the world, was based on a sincere but flawed ideology he pursued. He believed it was his duty to warn the world of God's intent, perhaps a form of Messiah complex. Russell wasn't the first one to become obsessed with this second coming of Christ phenomenon, the end times, last days, Armageddon, the rapture, etc. Someone else already went down that path well before Russell did. Let's go back a few years, shall we? Back to 1855. Taze Russell was just 3 years old. Just a 40-minute drive down south from here, which this is Shepparton, and back in the mid-1850s, this area, particularly up in the high country, was where the gold rush was. There were little towns popping up everywhere, and people were coming from all parts of the world to take part in the great Australian gold rush. Now, there happened to be a fellow out there by the name of Nelson H. Barber. He was an American, an educated American, and he was out here looking for gold. My question is, what's an American doing out here looking for gold when there was a gold rush in America and they were literally pulling tons of the stuff out of the ground over there in America? Why come out to Australia? Well, that got me thinking. I think I've got the answer to that. It seems to me that our friend Nelson may have been on the run, not from doing anything illegal, but I think there was a bit of flack back home. Nelson was greatly influenced by this man. His name was William Miller. He was born in 1782, and he convinced Nelson that the return of Christ and all the stuff that went with it was going to happen in 1843. Well, this got Nelson's attention, and he brought the story lock, stock and barrel and told everybody. Well, newsflash, nothing happened in 1843. This was a shock to Nelson. He is really down emotionally and spiritually. That's my opinion as to why he's out here in Australia. He needs to get over this. Now, you're probably wondering what the connection is between old mate Nelson out here in the scrub looking for gold and Taze Russell. Nelson out here is pushing 30. Taze Russell is about 3 years old. But 20 years down the track, they would join up. They would get to know each other, and they would share theological ideas. In fact, a lot of the ideas that Nelson had are also found in the Jehovah's Witness organisation today. It may be altered a little bit, but some of the basics are still there. So this fellow was very influential in helping Taze Russell set up his publishing empire in its early days. Nelson heads back to America around about 1859. He takes the long way home via Africa, and a chance meeting with a chaplain rekindles his faith in God, the Bible, and also the end times phenomena. The big question is, where did Mr. Russell get his erroneous ideas from? According to him, it was from God himself. But the facts present a different story, and the internet provides some interesting information. His early publications left a clear and undeniable footprint. His connections became apparent. Confirmation is page 1 of his Watchtower magazine. Zionism. Masonic symbols. The Watchtower. That's from the Adventist movement. As to where Mr. Russell would get his information from, it would seem anywhere. Here is a comment found in the Watchtower magazine 1879. This is the July edition, volume 1, and it contains this quote from Mr. Russell. "We should learn to love and value truth for its own namesake, to respect and honour it wherever we find it, and by whomever presents it. Truth presented by Satan himself is just as true as if stated by God himself." End of quote. Well, I have a slight problem with that comment. A dream or a vision that someone had a few thousand years ago, and then interpreted by someone else who claims to have a special connection with God, is not a good foundation to base your beliefs on or revolve your life around. And yet, as we speak, that is what millions of people are still doing. Pyramidology is the belief that the Great Pyramid of Egypt has encoded within it predictions. For example, the Jewish exodus out of Egypt. Another is the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, the start of World War I, the founding of modern-day Israel in 1948, future events like the War of Armageddon or the end of the world as we know it. These are all based on the size of the pyramid, where 1 British inch equals 1 solar year. Just add a dose of creative thinking, and there you have the answer to all things important. All these ideas were influential within that creative mind of Tars Russell and his obsession. Barber and Russell eventually team up and produce written material. It would seem some people never learn. Predictions and dates are made, and as usual, it's a failure. Their partnership was short-lived due to doctrinal differences, and they part company. Russell now has full control of the organisation. The addiction to prediction continues. Tars Russell now makes the doozy of them all. This is the prediction of 1914, the mother of all predictions. One needs to Go back and read the actual publications and the writings that Taras Russell made to get a clear understanding of what was going through his mind. Well, good news, people. Lots of lives were now saved. Everything Taras Russell said that was going to happen did not happen. Wait a minute. Something did happen. World War I, the Great War. This Great War was agitating for a long time. The arrogance of rulers who simply got it wrong, driven by greed, control, territorial boundaries, historical tension between ethnic groups, nationalism, and a healthy dose of religion. All these components put together start and fuel wars, as is the case with this one. Let's be clear. This event was not planned by God, part of God's timetable, delivered in a dream to a Bible character a few thousand years ago, then somehow installed into Taras Russell's mind and correctly interpreted by him, and then presenting this theological timetable given to him by God to the world as God's special soul messenger. Resentment for Mr. Russell and his failed prediction grows, and many followers leave. If only he could go back in time and alter his rhetoric. The clock literally stops for him on October 31, 1916. Another victim of a delusional concept, and some would say spiritual abuse. My view of him is of a man who had a strong belief in God. He also had an abnormal belief concept that took over his mind and controlled his life. Some would say a classic case of a hijacked mind. Just how that happens is a mystery, an enigma that we intend to investigate. Mr. Russell is now deceased and laid to rest at the United Cemeteries, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This monument is an indication of his deep involvement with an ideology that is now debunked by the very society he inaugurated. The organisation he created continues. So does the obsession with the end times, Christ's return, Armageddon, doomsday predictions and the like. Lurking on the sidelines was this man, J.F. Rutherford. It seems to many researchers that he may have seized control of the Watchtower Society and was not automatically appointed unopposed. Millions believe he was God's choice in directing the society after Taras Russell. Others say he was an evil, misogynistic control freak who berated fellow believers on a regular basis. Due to the great failure of Mr. Russell's ideology, the church encountered a major loss in followers. Judge Rutherford had to reinvigorate the remaining believers and recruit new ones. How does one do that? First, you convince people that you have the hotline to God. You are God's channel of communication to the world. Now you start making new predictions, rewards and blessings that are too good to refuse. Tell them it's Bible-based. Demonize their current religion or belief system. They need to leave it to please God. Instill fear into people of the horrible consequences if they don't listen and change, become a member of this new church, the true church. This formula works every time. Well, now we have a new leader, and under this new leader, we have a new prediction. The prediction is this, that millions now living will never die. Yes, somehow you too can cheat death and live forever. Well, that one worked a treat. People fell for it and they flocked in again. Well, it all sounds good, but there was one small problem. You had to survive the great war of God upon mankind, known as Armageddon, in the final part of the end times. This neurological disorder is known as Armageddon madness. It was now under this new leadership delayed into the future a few years because Mr. Russell, the previous president of the Watchtower Society, simply got it wrong. But now we have new light. This time we're right. So to cheat death and not lose your life at Armageddon, you had to become a member of this church, Jehovah's Witnesses, and you had to remove yourself from your current religion or your belief system, whatever that was. It was not approved by God. Now, was this man mentally hijacked as well? Or was he a devout believer? Was he naive? Or was he just another professional con man? Rutherford needed to keep the numbers up, so he needed another enticement or a prediction to get the people in. He focused on 1925 this time, a pivotal year in the outworking of God's plan for mankind. A new world order was imminent at about that time. The end of time for world governments, religions. Sounds a bit like Armageddon to me. This doctrine would continue for decades and would be fine-tuned and adjusted along the way. It had to be because it was yet another prediction that did not come to fruition. Even today, many still believe they can cheat death because they will survive the coming Armageddon under God's protective care, by means of this unique fellowship known as God's earthly organisation, Jehovah's Witnesses. The rest of us are doomed. If you thought these religious ideas were somewhat bizarre up till now, then brace yourself, it gets worse. Now the earth would need someone to administer a new world order, so Noah, Abraham, Moses, John the Baptist, these faithful old friends of God in the Bible would now come to life. They would rise from their graves, come to life again in perfect health. They would become part of the ruling fraternity of this new system or new world order. Well, the people fell for that one too, and they flocked in. But wait, They would need somewhere to live. Problem solved. Mr. Rutherford had a 10-bedroom mansion built for them in Brayburn Road, San Diego, still there today. They would live there in luxury and administer Earth's affairs under the direction of Jesus Christ from there, in conjunction with the Watchtower Society. As usual, 1925 came and went and nothing happened. But what really happened was Mr. Rutherford lived there instead, in the lap of luxury with his 2 high-powered luxury Cadillac motorcars. Today, the belief in the end times, surviving Armageddon, living in paradise on earth forever, never dying, is one of the fundamental core teachings of this religious organisation. If that's you, then the battle for your mind has been won.